There are mysteries at every step of the way, but nothing could have prepared this hiker for what he saw on A troop of wolves silently surrounded the lonesome trail as dusk struck. When he finally understood why his eyes were there, they glinted with an intensity that suggested a secret. Almost halted, what secret does nature protect so strongly that even the wild cannot ignore it? Pay attention. Discover the terrifying revelation that led to this unforgettable meeting in the untamed wilderness. A lone hiker sets out on a trek that promises to combine the natural beauty of the area with the unadulterated, unpredictable nature of the wild. Among the towering pines and meandering trails, there is both adventure and reflection. The forest has a serene yet enigmatic atmosphere, with only the sound of rustling leaves and distant. Many people hear the cries of invisible creatures, but for one guy, these woods are a haven. But soon, they will serve as the backdrop for a character that will subvert all expectations of security and wonder. Michael, a seasoned hiker who enjoys discovering isolated trails, has frequently known for his calm disposition and a spirit that flourished on solitude. He found comfort in the embrace of nature, appreciate the opportunity to escape the bustle of daily life, and spend time in nature on a cool autumn evening. Michael sat as the sun sank below the horizon and a gentle golden glow filled the forest. As darkness gradually engulfed the forest, he set out on what he thought would be a typical trek along a well-traveled path. Michael started to observe a number of minor shifts in the mood. The typical cacophony of nighttime noises seemed to be replaced by a chilling silence that made him shudder, yet it wasn't. A pair of eyes appeared, first one, then another, long before he knew he was no longer alone in the shadows. He was surrounded in silence by a whole pack of wolves, whose presence was both majestic and menacing. Time appeared to stop for a heartbeat as they approached the lone hiker with another earthly grace. Michael's instincts told him to run, but he was stuck there, overcome with a mix of terror and anxiety. The wolves' gaze was filled with wonder and intense interest about the mystery that had attracted these powerful creatures to him, uncompromising as though they were stewards of an old truth, subtly conveying something essential that went beyond the limits of human comprehension. Michael was unaware that this eerie gathering was not a chance nature, but the foreshadowing of an epiphany that would leave him speechless. A truth so profound that at that precise time Michael's journey into the wilderness had always been a highly personal one, a chance to escape, until his heart almost stopped. That Borum evening, with the unrelenting speed of contemporary life, and to re-establish a connection with the timeless rhythm of nature. He set out down a remote trail deep within a big, ancient forest, the amber hues of sunset still lingering in the sky. The route was well known, yet constantly evolving, with tall pines whose every stir in the underbrush, every distant bird's trill, every silhouette dancing against the waning light conveyed the potential for self-discovery and reflection. As Michael continued to explore the woodland, he observed how the regular nocturnal sounds started to dissolve into an eerie silence. A heavy silence that pressed in on all sides replaced the chorus of crickets and owls, and with every step came a faint tension began to seep into his consciousness, a sense that something more than his usual was attracting him. Experienced intuition developed by years of hiking alone detected that this was no ordinary walk, and shortly from the corner of his eye, Michael began to notice little indications of his alone disappearing. At first, he ignored the shadows flying between the trees as tricks of the dim light, but as he arrived at a small clearing encircled by thick forest, he noticed a tangible presence. The temperature dropped, and the silence of the moment seemed to have a sacred quality. Then, as though coming from the forest's very depths, a pair of sparkling eyes appeared. One by one, additional pairs arrived. The wolves moved with an almost tick ease until Michael realized he was surrounded by a group of them. Their fur is a mixture of gray and russet, and grace is encircling him in a solemn circle. Something shimmered in the dim light and blended flawlessly with the tree's fall color scheme, and every wolf's eyes were fixated on it. For a little moment, Michael felt the weight of their eyes, which were filled with an intensity and wisdom that looked almost human. their collective gaze, a communal silence that went beyond words, a message encoded in. Michael's heart thumped in his chest, speaking in the language of the wild, which years of hiking had. Nothing in his past had prepared him for such an encounter, but it had prepared him for the unpredictable character of nature. There was a calculated calm in the pack's formation rather than an immediate threat, and their position was. They appeared to be waiting patiently and deliberately in anticipation rather than being blatantly angry or confrontational. Of something, the harmony between mystery and menace produced an unearthly, surreal environment that left. Michael was fascinated and nervous as he cautiously looked around the circle of. He started to observe information about wolves that led him to doubt the randomness of their actions. There was a pattern, too. Their intentional spacing conveyed a sense of coherence and purpose. Secrets of the woodland appeared to be hidden in eyes that gleamed with the moon's and stars' reflections as they now emerged in the sky. Ancient secrets from Michael's intellect, handed down through centuries of wild souls. Wondered if his presence had attracted these wolves to this area, or if he had any connection to the myth of the. It was both thrilling and unsettling to hear the forest guardian that local law murmured about their determination to collect clues. Michael took his camera and notepad out of his backpack and started to carefully record the situation, making notes. The precise arrangement of the wolves, the minute changes in their demeanor, and the uncanny silence that had landed on a clearing. Every detail was meticulously documented in a quiet, wilderness's entreaty that he must comprehend the significance of his training as an experienced hiker combined with a renewed interest in the unexplainable. He realized that this encounter wasn't just a chance occurrence. However, as the moment dragged on into infinity, the wild itself constructed a message. Over time, Michael's initial panic gave way to a more profound, almost mystical, feeling. Understanding that the wolves were there to offer a meaningful invitation to face a challenge rather than to intimidate him. The hiker's thoughts strayed to recollections of earlier excursions where nature was there, either as a secret or as a sign connected to his own life. Had provided direction in subtle ways, a wind ruffle that hinted at a shift, a peaceful route that led to. Now that he was encircled by the pack, every heartbeat brought him startling revelations. Infused with the potential for change in that intensely private exchange, Michael thought the forest itself was calling out to him directly in a timeless way that spoke to his deepest anxieties and forgotten. Believes that the pack's constant presence caused him to reflect on the lines separating the wild from the human, pushing him to examine every aspect of the forest, not only its outer boundaries, but also the depths of his own psyche. Interaction, from the wolf's-eye gleam to the minute changes in the atmosphere, was a component of a more complex and mysterious. In the hours that followed the first encounter, Michael's world appeared to be a picture that he was determined to solve. To subtly change every moment that was filled with both beauty and fear, the pack of wolves having circled him in the clearing before slowly dispersing, leaving Michael with a lot of questions in his head. He chose to stay in the area, his pulse still pounding from the intensity of the encounter, desperate to find any further hints concealed within the forest's vigor. When he sat down on a nearby fallen log, Michael took out his notebook and started writing down every aspect of the event, including the wolves' exact formation. Their gaze's direction and the slight adjustments to their stance suggested that their composed yet purposeful behavior was virtually created a silent language that is communicated through looks and nuanced gestures in. The hiker realized that the wolves were messengers with a message of significance, not just animals. Profound personal meaning. And as the night became darker, Michael's thoughts shifted. Internal recollections of earlier TRS flooded back, recalling moments when nature had acted as a mirror and a guide to his inner world. He remembered an instance in which a sudden shift in the wind had changed his course, bringing him to a secret waterfall that subsequently became a representation of rebirth and is now encircled by. These magnificent animals made Michael feel as though his life was at a turning point. With their mysterious presence, the wolves appear to be pressuring him to face parts of himself that he had long suppressed. Unfulfilled dreams, concealed regrets, and a recurring desire for connection. When he was surrounded by something bigger than himself, the forest seemed to become even more silent, as though it were also keeping it. Michael's eyes, adjusting to the faint light, caught sight of the breath in anticipation. Of something peculiar was a tiny, aged tree near the foot of an old oak tree that was half hidden by tangled roots. Something that might be a pendant or a charm that sparkles subtly in the moonlight. Michael, fascinated, went up to the tree and bent down to examine the item. It was a straightforward silver medallion engraved with an unfamiliar symbol, a crescent entwined with a string of historic. It felt purposeful to have runes concealed in the bushes, as if it had been left there for him to discover. Was it related to the local folklore story of the Woodland Guardian? Michael's mind raced as he pocketed the medallion, as was frequently whispered. The medallion and other concrete clues appeared to connect the wolf's lonely vigil to a larger fabric of myth and mystery. Relic from a long-lost custom, a protective token handed down through the years, the idea filled him with astonishment and a persistent feeling of destiny, and he decided to do more investigation to find out what it meant. The emblem in nearby historical records, and possibly seek advice from a regional folklore specialist in the interim as Michael. As he reclined on the log, the environment around him started to shift once more. Once completely quiet, the woodland now echoed with the gentle sounds of nightlife, including a distant rustle, soft sound of a nearby stream, and the owl's sporadic hoot. Yet despite these well-known noises, there was a subtle undercurrent of something else, a continuous, nearly undetectable hum as Michael tried to listen, as if the forest itself were whispering secrets, to interpret the sound, and discovered that it appeared to be coming from the woods far away from the clearing with his. As his curiosity grew, he concluded that his next course of action was obvious, and that he would carefully follow the sound. He got up from the log. As he returned to the small trail, his senses were sharp and his heart was settling. The wolves had vanished from view. Michael sensed their presence in every gust of wind and leaf rustle after returning to the forest shadows. As he left the clearing and headed into a section of the woodland, the buzz of the wind became more intense. That seemed more ancient, almost hallowed. After a little while, the trail brought him to a tiny, old boulders and overhanging branches create a natural amphitheater in the middle of this isolated area. A dim luminescent light pulsed in the surroundings were illuminated by a gentle yet captivating radiance that seemed to emanate from within the earth itself. Michael moved slowly toward the medallion, which was heavy in his pocket, amid heavenly radiance, feeling as if he were standing in that silent, shimmering circle on the precipice of a revelation. He halted, the moment's weight crushing down on him, each detail arranged the concealed medallion, the wolf's silence, and the earth's rhythmic radiance to create a tapestry of enigma and fate. Michael's heart grew with a mixture of fear and hope that the forest was pushing him to discover a heritage that extended over time in the universe by disclosing its mysteries and layers. As Michael stood in the natural amphitheater, he felt as though his existence was a combination of the visible and invisible realms. Interwoven with the wild, the encounter with the wolves was a cry to awaken, not just a chance encounter. A deeper aspect of himself that was aware of the earth's language and the wilderness's ancient rites. He decided to investigate this mysterious universe further in order to piece together the remaining hints with newfound vigor. As Michael kept investigating the natural world, he was influenced by both nature and those who had previously traversed these areas. He ventured deeper into the mystery as the earth's rhythmic glow pulsed like a heartbeat in the amphitheater. His senses were gradually sharpened by the combination of odd occurrences, including the eerie silence, the continuous hum, and the medallion he had previously discovered burnt brightly against his palm in the faint glow beneath the ancient boulders. It seemed to be pushing him forward, tying him to something bigger than himself in the middle of the. Michael found an unexpected sight in the amphitheater, a finely carved stone tablet partially buried beneath The tablet's surface was worn over time by a thin covering of moss and fallen leaves. Michael knelt down, his pocket containing runes and symbols that reflected those inscribed on the medallion. A shock went through him as he brushed the rubbish aside with shaky fingers, and the carving's intricacies became more apparent. A family crest that he had only ever seen in a faded photo from his childhood was strikingly similar to one of the symbols. During childhood, the crest had an ancient wolf entwined with vines. A sudden burst of wind, writing a symbol that he now understood to be very personal, shook the amphitheater, and Michael saw something he couldn't believe when he looked up. A ghostly figure, a translucent shape of a guy wearing clothing, stood at the edge of the clearing. The figure's eyes gleamed with a gentle, ethereal light that mirrored a bygone period, and its presence seemed to emanate strength and grief for a brief while. Michael's heart was racing, and he sensed a strong bond with the apparition, as though this spirit had an ancestral guardian had been waiting for him, speaking in a voice that seemed to echo out of the ages. The apparition said, "Remember who you are," without moving its lips, and the words struck a chord deep within his own memories. Michael had long buried the spectral guardian, whom he now acknowledged as a spirit, deep beneath his burning emotions. Forebear seemed to be the actual personification of the woodland guardian mythology that had been mentioned in local folklore. He realized in whispers that the automobile, the wolf pack, and the medallion were all fragments of an old history that connected his lineage to the mystic protectors of. The ethereal form started to move as Michael processed this revelation. With its message, which was still there in the crisp night air at that precise moment, the group of, as the wolves, who had been calmly observing from the shadows, started to change positions. Their eyes glowed within. They appeared to recognize the ancestral call with a level of intensity that transcended simple animal instinct, as though verifying that the lead wolf, Michael, was one of their own, and his first shone with an almost. A gentle, almost respectful wail that reverberated around the area was uttered by supernatural luster, was a call to awaken and accept a destiny rather than one of danger. It had been written a long time ago, but the overwhelming weight of the data and the intense feelings. Michael's mind raced as he remembered bits and pieces of stories from his early years about an enigmatic uncle who was rumored to have an eerie affinity for a family's nature. Blessed by the wild and tasked with keeping its secrets safe, those tales had always felt far away. A family's historical folklore decorations intended to evoke wonder are now displayed in the natural amphitheater. Michael realized, holding the ancient tablet in his hands and hearing the ghostly figure's message in his ears, that these were truths that had been transmitted through the generations, not just stories. Michael, who was keen to piece together the entirety of his heritage, collected the tablet and carefully wrapped it in his. Today, he decided to go back to the neighborhood historical society to look through ancient documents and speak with elders who might remember his ancestors' tales. His discovery marked a watershed, a time when the line between myth and reality vanished, exposing a fate entwined with the spirit itself. Michael's heart grew when he saw the forest in that moment of revelation. The wolves were more than simply untamed animals prowling the forest. They were his relatives, and he felt both awe and responsibility for them. Defenders of a centuries-old legacy, the spectral guardian, the tablet, and the medallion were all indications that he belonged to a long-standing order of guardians who acted as a link between the human world and the understanding of the sacred wilderness was both thrilling and intimidating. Indicated that his meeting was the awakening of a dormant calling rather than a chance turn of events. As the first rays of morning peeked through the trees, Michael knew that his quest had been inside him throughout his life, had evolved from a solo investigation into a deep search for meaning and identity. The forest with its, he had heard from spectral guardians and old mysteries, and he was now prepared to hear the truth about his heritage, and the revelation of the mystical connection with the wild had led him on a road that would alter his life forever. Following his incredible revelation at the Old Stone Circle, Michael was swept away in the days that followed, into a tornado of opposing feelings and changing viewpoints. The message from the spectral guardian, the engraved tablet, and, in addition to releasing a concealed legacy, the medallion compelled him to face aspects of his personality that he had long suppressed as news of his encounter steadily spread in. Local circles. Michael witnessed a range of responses from people in his immediate vicinity that reflected his initial internal metamorphosis. Michael's best friend Mark was unconvinced. Mark listened carefully as Michael spoke during one of their regular coffee dates at a tiny neighborhood diner. Described all the specifics of that fateful night when the wolves planned their creation. The enigmatic medallion and the spectral person telling him to keep in mind who you is. Mark's forehead furrowed as he answered, "It sounds amazing, Michael, but are you certain it wasn't merely a trick of the light? Sometimes, when we're by ourselves, our imaginations may play complex games with us." Even though Mark's remarks were tinged with uncertainty in the dark, Michael could tell that underneath his friend's practical facade. Over time, as Michael's own conviction strengthened, there was a quiet curiosity. Mark started talking about a recent hiking trip in which he had a brief vision of something eerie. This mutual vulnerability helped close the gap between skepticism and conviction near an ancient ruin, creating a hesitant bond as they worked together to navigate the mysteries. While local, when a neighborhood meeting was convened, people started to notice the hikers' strange experiences. Michael was asked to speak at a modest gathering in the town hall that was originally planned to explore local folklore. Describing his experience, the room was packed with a mixture of older citizens who were cynical and inquisitive, recalled dim recollections of legends handed down over the ages about during emotional crises, a woodland guardian would emerge to lead the lost, their voices quivering with, though emotion and nostalgia gave Michael's story credibility. Some vocal participants rejected the tale as superstition, claiming that in a time of advanced technology, and among the throng, Sarah was a logical person who believed that legends had no place in reality. Local folklore enthusiast and historian, whose sympathetic gaze never left Michael as he talked following the meeting. Sarah came up to him in silence and remarked, "Your narrative touches on something more profound than merely an odd meeting. It serves as a link between our shared history and the present. I think there's more to it, maybe a message to remind us of our roots." Her words were warm and sincere, made Michael feel validated, which made him feel more obligated to record his experiences and look for people who might have the same components at home. Michael's transition was characterized by, with a fresh sense of freedom, he reorganized his study to make a tiny shrine where he showed reproductions of the faded family photo he had found in his attic, together with a medallion IR stone tablet. He would stop in front of this improvised memorial every evening before embarking on his regular TRS, seemingly sketching. The ceremony gave him the courage and direction he needed to manage the conflicting feelings of wonder, dread, and accountability. But as the days stretched into weeks, he also had episodes of loneliness, the burden of the ancestors' summons, and the sense of fate weighed heavily on him. And the only thing that gave him comfort was the soft sound of the woodland and the sporadic encouraging text from Sarah, or perhaps a wary one from Mark. At the same time, local media started to report on the Watcher of the Woods phenomenon. The small-town newspaper featured an image of a lone hiker searching for long-lost secrets, a story that veered between sensationalism and sincere interest. Yet several readers gave Michael credit for. Michael was under additional pressure because of the conflicting public response to his bravery, which led to others mocking him as an eccentric. Found himself torn between the obligation to reveal the truth for the sake of others and the desire to keep his discoveries private. He started a personal blog that chronicled his travels in order to preserve his family's legacy, inviting people to contribute any family tales or comparable experiences that could be connected to the forest's old heritage. The site gradually gained a small following of believers and seekers who offered support and, in one really moving case, shared their own whispered legends. While late one evening, while going through his journal, Michael unexpectedly got a letter from his distant cousin Elena. Described tales that were passed down in their family as part of a guardianship tradition, written in a kind and thoughtful manner. Elena's remarks struck a chord with Michael on a deep and lasting connection to the wilderness. Deep level, confirming that his experience was a part of a tradition rich in mystery and respect for the natural world. In addition to strengthening his determination, the connections serve as a reassuring reminder that he was not alone in this. Despite these moments of confirmation, Michael occasionally felt overwhelmed by the magnitude of the revelation. He would sit at the window in the calm before dawn, feeling overpowered. During those moments, he was able to observe the shadowy woodland and hear the distant howls of wolves. Battleground between the harsh realities of a contemporary, cynical society and the allure of ancient mysteries. But amidst his personal turmoil, he realized that the forest's legacy was beckoning to him, through these intricate relationships, to a destiny that overcame uncertainty and anxiety. Michael started to adapt to his surroundings with the help of friends, family, neighbors, and the subtle but enduring allure of the wild. The mystery surrounding the wolves and the ancestral guardians was no longer a personal burden. Rather, it was a communal one. In the days that followed, he searched for a tapestry of tales that linked him to a larger, nearly timeless legacy. Michael's quest for understanding started to take unforeseen turns after his intense meeting in the clearing, combining several subplots that enhanced and added complexity to the mystery of the medallion, the stone tablet. And a strong link to the forest's ancient lore had been reawakened in him by the spectral guardian. But as he began to record his experiences, additional difficulties surfaced, exposing that, underneath layers of local legend, personal history, and even institutions, the truth was hidden. In difference, Michael met Daniel one evening at the local historical society while looking over historical records. Daniel's weathered visage and gentle demeanor reflect his decades of outdoor experience as a former park ranger. Over steaming coffee, Daniel shared stories that revealed a wealth of information about the place that had been lost. Of unexplained occurrences in the forest, stories of eerie lights close to old stone circles and guardian whispers. Spirit that manifested at intense emotional crises. Daniel's own experiences gave Michael's interactions, but he also cautioned about a darker side and a danger that frequently accompanied such mystical events. Daniel warned that not all secrets are meant to be revealed. As Michael internalized, the wild maintains its mysteries, and disrupting them can unleash forces that are out of our control. According to Daniel, he got an unexpected email from Emily Rivera, a local reporter who had been following the. Emily, the door-story watcher, showed increasing interest in her message by revealing that she had been looking into similar events in the area and had collected testimonies from a number of hikers who had seen unexplainable. A family with a lengthy history in the area was noted in one particularly fascinating account about distant trails. This family was said to be the guardians of the forest's old law, claimed to be connected to symbols that were similar to those on Michael's tablet and medallion. Intrigued, Michael contacted the journalist, and the two of them started comparing their data, finding evidence of a genetic obligation. That could help explain why some people are drawn to the wild in a mysterious way, whereas Michael's best friend Mark had been a voice of cautious skepticism at first, began talking about his own disturbing experiences at a recent. Mark, who was on a camping trip, described seeing a dark figure close to an abandoned homestead. The vision paralleled Michael's experience with the ghostly guardian. Even though Mark found it difficult to express his emotions, his confession increased the intrigue by implying that these occurrences weren't unique to Michael and may instead be a issue grew even worse due to a wider, unexplainable pattern that affected individuals who traveled far into these old countries. More complicated when Michael learned that local officials were starting to pay attention to the strange occurrences. Several locals said that there were speculations that animal control had been sent to keep an eye on recent sightings of sizable, unusual wolf packs in the region. Their presence was meant to address public safety issues that unintentionally endangered the forest's fragile equilibrium. Otherworldly setting. Michael was torn between protecting the mysterious cultural legacy of the wild and the practical requirements of contemporary government. He was concerned that an overly enthusiastic, in addition to these outside pressures, interference might destroy the precise clues Michael needed to discover the truth. Late at night, he got a passionate letter that further reflected the influence of his newfound obsession in his personal life. From his distant cousin Elena, who shared stories about the family that suggested a long-lost heritage of. Elena, the guardian, explained how some of their family members were thought to have an inherent relationship with nature, a link that gave them a near-natural sense of the secrets of the forest. Words struck a profound chord with Michael, strengthening his conviction that his experiences were a part of a greater, received destiny's inheritance. But her letter also cautioned against the personal costs such a calling could be a gentle reminder to continue with self-compassion and prudence in the face of these subplots that were developing. Michael took comfort in the growing online community he had established via his personal blog. Local folklore enthusiasts and other hikers started sharing their own tales, which ranged from unexplainable interactions with wildlife to hushed legends that have been passed down through the ages. In addition to confirming his experiences, these shared accounts provided fresh leads. One user in particular described an enigmatic ceremony conducted close to a secret grove where people would congregate to pay respect to a legendary wolf spirit thought to be the land's guardian. Michael was intrigued by the story and decided to look into it more in the hopes that it would lead to a missing. All of these components, the cautions of knowledgeable individuals like Daniel, the research activities of Emily Rivera, Mark and Elena's intimate revelations, and the lively internet debates combined to create a complicated mosaic of mystery and difficulty. Michael now understood that his path was not only a lone search for truth, but a synthesis of several viewpoints and experiences, each contributing depth to the forest's heritage. But each new link brought a fresh layer of doubt. He started to wonder if his destiny was to merely watch and record or to actively participate in forces that had led his forefathers for generations as they stood on the precipice of. Michael sensed the pressure building in the forest with these entwined mysteries. Its ghostly guardians and old stones called out to him, imploring him to make his way through the labyrinth of. His determination was put to the test by the folklore, family history, and contemporary skepticism. The difficulty of maintaining the delicate equilibrium between myth and reality, which could be destroyed if it is upset. Following the escalating subplots, Michael's journey took an even more dramatic turn, revealing the same secrets he aimed to. Introspective shift as he started to have severe internal difficulties brought on by his interactions with the crazy every new piece of evidence, every mystery symbol on the medallion. A reminder of his legacy was provided by the inscription on the stone tablet, and even by the Phantom Guardian's silent message. Had forgotten, but these revelations also presented him with difficult emotional decisions that called into question his comprehension of himself and his role in the world. Late one night, following a demanding day of research and field notes at the local historical society, Michael was sitting by himself in his mod cabin. He covered his diary, which was full of in-depth observations and introspective thoughts, with a little flickering lamp. The vivid images of the wolf's life made the solitude he had loved feel like a heavy burden during these quiet moments. The ethereal entity's haunting presence and unwavering gaze were not merely external phenomenon that mirrored Michael's thoughts, unresolved experiences, and emotional scars. Turned to his early years to repress long-suppressed memories of lost ties and family legends, which now appeared to reappear with an unexpected clarity, recalling the tales his mother had recounted about him, ancestral ties to the natural world that promised safety and direction in difficult times. But when these memories came flooding back, they also caused Michael to feel more vulnerable as he asked more questions in an attempt to understand the symbolic signals. Were these experiences a sign of deep-seated emotional issues that affected his own sanity, requirements, or were they authentic echoes of a long-standing legacy in his inner monologue? Fluctuated between growing faith in the mystical forces that appeared to be calling to him from and reasonable doubt. Conversations with others around him, while simultaneously exploring the depths of the forest. Michael's emotional landscape became even more complex at a follow-up visit with Sarah, the local historian. Sarah revealed a personal story about herself to the fore at a peaceful area of a nearby cafe. I recall my grandma, who was a steadfast believer in the power of nature's signs. Sarah mentioned quietly how my grandmother used to say that the forest speaks to people who pay attention, and occasionally the message is about more than just what you can see. It's about what you feel deep within. Kind comments struck a chord with Michael, but they also exacerbated his internal struggle. Questioned whether his own search for truth was a manifestation of his wish to mend old wounds, or if it was a sincere appeal from his heritage, even marking the beginning of his pragmatic best friends. Observe the change on one of their usual nightly strolls around town. Mark carefully brought up the topic with Michael. I saw the passion in you, but occasionally going too far can create wounds. I'm concerned that you're following shadows, which may cause more harm than good despite being motivated by sincere concern, hit Michael hard. Made him face the prospect that his unrelenting quest for knowledge would have a personal cost and emotional toll that could cause him to feel alone and damaged. But deep down, even if it meant taking a chance, Michael felt a strong pull toward the truth and a need to confront the darkness of his history. Further suffering at the same time as Michael began to create an online community, started to provide a range of support and critique via his blog, while numerous other fans and local folklore enthusiasts asked questions, related comparable experiences, and gave encouraging counsel. Some questioned the legitimacy of his voyage, mocking his faith in ethereal guardians and the beckoning of ancient legacies. These online exchanges, together with the antiquated superstitions, strengthened his resolve and contributed to his internal strife. The tension between harsh criticism and public approval served as a mirror for his inherent conflict between the ancient mystical stories and the logical modern world that today characterized his search. In a particularly moving instance, when Michael got a long email from Elena, his distant Elena, our cousin, said with a mixture of compassion and a warning. Family has always been both pragmatic and mystical. But keep in mind, dear cousin, that embracing, accepting both the beauty and the anguish of our past is necessary. Do not lose yourself. Allow the light of our legacy to lead you through the darkness with this message, which is gentle and full of familial love. It gave Michael a moment's relief from his inner turmoil and served as a reminder that although the trip was emotionally taxing, dangers, but it also presented a chance for recovery and a chance to combine the disparate pieces of his identity into a whole between the fear of emotional breakdown and the allure of ancient mystery. Michael's inner. Every time he closed his eyes, the world turned into a battlefield, and he was met with vivid visions of the ghost. The wolf's soulful gaze and the guardian were both sources of intense wisdom and a reminder of the dangers of revealing long-buried truths that weigh heavily on his heart. Both excitement and fear surged when it became clear that this quest was about more than just exploring the outside world. Concerning an inward voyage into the depths of his own soul, when Michael's internal conflict grew more intense, minor changes in unexpected clues and the ambience of the forest intensified as the mystery revealed powers much beyond his personal journey. One especially tense evening, as Michael went through his journal and rewatched his most recent, he saw a stunning detail in the video, a clear flash of movement at the very edge of his field of vision, just past the well-known clearing in this new scene. The wolf's behavior had assumed in the lead wolf's eyes, which had long emanated serene knowledge, possessed an almost ceremonial urgency. GL is now pacing nervously and frequently in the direction of a far-off thicket. It seemed as though the pack had a hunch that something was amiss, a secret presence that would be discovered the next morning. With a renewed sense of resolve, Michael ventured out into the densely misted forest. He found a number of peculiar marks carved into the bark of a tree along the small trail that led away from his house. These subtle yet purposeful symbols of old trees bore a remarkable likeness. They almost created a mysterious sequence for those on the medallion and the stone tablet he had discovered. When Michael realized that these markings weren't natural scars, his heartbeat quickened like a coded message. The trees, but rather intentional indications left by those who held the ancient world in high regard. They seemed to murmur stories about a time when the forest was teeming with mystic guardians and sacred rites. Michael came upon an elderly archaeologist in the afternoon while conducting additional research at the local historical society. Mr. Reynolds, whose voice was as quiet as the rustle of leaves, uncovered a long-lost document that described eerie local legends. The Watcher of the Wild, a spirit said to appear through wolves and other animals, was mentioned in the book. Mr. Reynolds' statements forewarn of upcoming developments that will be both tragic and transformative. Despite being spoken in a tone of solemn nostalgia, he said there was a sense of urgency in times of, during periods of intense social or psychological turmoil, the forest used its animals and symbols to communicate, urging. Michael's revelations caused others who listened to pay attention to its cautions. Came home that evening with a renewed sense of purpose after going over his copious notes. He received a text message that made him shiver. It said, "The truth lies beneath the ancient." The message included a blurry photo of a huge, twisted oak tree near the center of the forest, with roots that twisted into the ground like the land's veins. This unexpected discovery implied that the mysteries he had been unraveling were a component of a more extensive and complex tapestry that extended. Determined to follow this lead, Michael organized a nighttime expedition into the heart of the forest. A party had always avoided the wooded areas because of their eerie silence and menacing darkness as dusk descended on the evening of his journey. Michael said, taking his camera and notes with him, he ventured out onto the perilous trail that wound through thick undergrowth and narrow, shaded pathways that appeared to bend in on themselves, and his own heartbeat could be heard reverberating with each step. Deep within the forest, in the peaceful solitude, close to the location where the anonymous photo was taken, when Michael discovered the ancient oak, its enormous trunk and expansive roots gave off an air of venerable might. The ground was covered in rusty metal fragments, worn coins, and other relics of ancient objects. Pottery bits that subtly, even reverently, alluded to previous rites. The oak seemed to pulsate as Michael captured these details, giving him the impression that he was entering a sacred space. With vitality, its twisted branches extended like shielding arms. It was here that Michael felt the convergence of all the clues, tree markings, mysterious manuscript, and the messages from his spectral guardian all came together to guide him to a truth as old as the forest itself. The woodland was alive with whispers and a chorus of rustling as the tension reached its highest point in that tense atmosphere. Michael could hear the distant cries of the leaves and even the faint hum of the earth itself. The lines separating the spiritual and the physical are blurred, as though the forest were about to reveal its long-held secrets. Secrets, fresh hints, and passing shadows strengthened his resolve. Was this the time when he would eventually reveal the secret, while also intensifying the feeling of upcoming revelation, legacy of his ancestry, and comprehend the actual intent of the wolves' weekly vigil? Michael's mind was racing and his senses were sharpened as he stood under the old oak, reading the anonymous words that the mysterious document and intentional tree markings all alluded to a greater force at work, a force that reached the forest's very spirit and went beyond the person. It seemed as though he was being urged by the land itself to remove the layers of memory and time in order to face a fate entwined with the ongoing mystery surrounding Wild in the aftermath of growing hints and unsettling indications. Michael's research started to piece together a complex web of related stories that transcended his solo quest. His path was no longer limited to interpreting symbols or adhering to mysterious messages. It had developed into a mutual investigation of old law. At the local historical society, on a cold morning, legacy and collective memory, Michael met Ms. Caroline, a passionate archaeologist with extensive expertise. Caroline showed him a number of dusty books and manuscripts on local mythology, which described the Watcher of the Wild, a guardian spirit thought to connect with animals and the natural world. Symbolism amid turbulent times. One passage in particular drew Michael's attention because it detailed an ancestry endowed with the ability to hear the forest, where offspring were supposed to receive a. Caroline was hesitant to include some families because of her magical connection to nature. It's been said for a long time that you possess that gift. Perhaps your family's past is more reliable than contemporary doubt. Dares to own that her remarks strengthened Michael's conviction that his experiences had their origins in an old heritage. At the same time, Michael's blog, where he posted his research and personal reflections, started to draw a tiny but fervently following local history buffs, other hikers, and even skeptics left comments ranging from cautious criticism to sincere support, with one in particular. A user named Wudo left an interesting comment in which he recalled hearing eerie howls close to an ancient oak tree when he was a child. Each explained a comparable medallion that had been handed down through their family's generations. This common experience produced an unexpectedly bond implied that Michael was not alone in hearing the ethereal language of the forest. Interactions not only gave him support, but also inspired him to gather a collection of related tales, enhancing the idea that the legacy he was discovering had strong ties to the neighborhood. While Mark, Michael's closest friend, whose initial doubt had been replaced by a more sophisticated comprehension, started to express his. Mark shared his own fragmentary memories during a laid-back gathering at a nearby cafe one calm evening. Said he had seen an odd occurrence close to an abandoned homestead while on a recent camping trip, which he explained. How a dark figure had momentarily materialized among the trees, nearly replicating Michael's account of the. Despite Mark's brief and ambiguous narrative, Ghostly Guardian offered a concrete connection between their separate experiences, indicating that these interactions could be a component of a larger, incomprehensible pattern impacting individuals who delve far into these old territories, giving yet another level of complexity to the problem. Michael got a follow-up email from reporter Emily Rivera, whose series of investigations had already highlighted Michael's first meeting in her note. Emily described her most recent results from speaking with local elders. She related stories about a family that has long been thought to be the forest protectors, a family whose crest, which included an ancient rune entwined with a wolf, was very similar to the symbols on the stone tablet. Emily's revelations and Michael's medallion suggested that Michael's own lineage might be inextricably linked to this guardianship legacy. The notion that he might be descended from such a family infused his quest with a sense of obligation and a heavy burden as these various threads. Consequently, Michael started planning casual get-togethers with people who shared similar tales, and he gathered local folklore to a memorable gathering at a rustic barn on the outskirts of town. Aficionados, historians, and even a few fervent hikers who exchanged oral stories and first-hand accounts of mysterious forest occurrences. An old man told how decades ago during a violent storm, the family thought a spirit wolf had kept them safe, and a young woman told of a recurrent vision of a glowing wolf protecting her from harm. These collective stories provided further emotional complexity to Michael's own experience, turning his lonesome voyage into a group investigation of collective memory and myth. But not all of the relationships were cordial. Some local officials expressed fear that the resurgence of interest in the forest's mysterious properties could rekindle ancient superstitions. Rumors started to circulate that heritage might undermine the stability of the community. Soon, animal control would step in to move the wolves, possibly breaking the delicate connection between the natural. Michael's inquiry became more urgent as he recognized that the threat to the globe and the ancestral legacy was crucial if he wanted to record and preserve the facts before contemporary interference changed the terrain. During these developing subplots, Michael also found irreversible clues that the ancient oak, mentioned in the anonymous inscription and situated close to the center of the forest, had served as a focal point for ceremonies ages prior. On one of his outings, he noticed a faded inscript on a stone close to the oak that bore. Caroline had shared the inscription read in memory, and we hope we saw a strong resemblance to symbols in the manuscript. Michael's personal journey became even more interwoven with the larger fabric of our bound by nature. According to a local legend, Michael's mission was a part of a lengthy continuum of human interaction with the wild. Gathered these several family law community experiences, skeptic threads. He became increasingly confident that the ethereal heritage was entwined with his destiny as he heard voices and saw old symbols of the forest. Each new link expanded his knowledge of the forest and added to the mystery. Deep interaction between the present wilderness and historical myth as Michael's As the investigation progressed, the entwined subplots started to bring the tension among the community, and he came to a breaking point in his quest to understand the mysterious behavior of a wolf pack, which had begun as a personal quest, evolved into a heated discussion among local historians and authorities on the actual significance of. The once quiet trails of the forest's historic legacy were suddenly alive with passionate discussions, whispers, and at a town hall, there is growing concern that contemporary intervention could destroy the delicate connection between humans and nature. Local leaders and residents convened in the century-old community center to talk about as there were more and more accounts of strange wolf behavior. The mood became more emotional as locals recounted their personal, mysterious experiences, some of which mirrored Michael's, while others wrote the occurrences down as folklore. Mr. Whitaker, a stern councilman, was one of the voices that contended that we must put scientific data and public safety ahead of quaint traditions. These wolves are wild creatures, not mystical guardians. His remarks struck a chord with a portion of the audience that preferred calls for quick action to guarantee community security. Capturing or moving the wolves who were resisting him was a collection of locals and folklore aficionados who saw the wolves as revered guardians essential to the towns. They recalled ancient forest guardian legends and emphasized that these animals carried messages intended to rekindle tensions and lost realities. Intensified when local reporter Emily Rivera, who had been documenting Michael's journey, gave her most recent reveal her piece, which is based on conversations with local elders and historical snippets. Manuscripts suggested that the wolves might have a protective ancestry whose legacy was intricately interwoven with the identity of the community. They are not just animals, she vehemently stated while the gathering, but live reminders of our forefathers surrounded by the. Michael was caught in the crossfire of public criticism after his own blog articles drew both intents. There were ardent detractors and admirers, and demand to prove his findings was growing with each news report. It further polarized the community, leading him to doubt his readiness to take on the role of reviving a tradition that many people now vigorously discuss at home. Michael's inner. As the battle grew more intense, he had restless dreams in which the wolf pack and the spectral guardian, a duality that represented both protection and an approaching reckoning, emerged together. The medallion, the ancient oak close to the center of the forest, and the carved tablet were both physical reminders of a fate that appeared to demand revelation during a particularly intense moment, no matter how painful it is. Michael was watching fresh video on his camera system when he discovered something that made him feel alarmed. The lead wolf that had been his nocturnal companion, due to its steady gaze, was now circling wildly close to the ancient oak. At the same time, the spectral tree was marked in the anonymous text message. A figure that had before very fleetingly entered his field of vision was clearly depicted, standing on film. Still in the distance, seemingly protecting the oak, the scene was both enthralling and ominous. Showed the forces at play were actively engaging, possibly for protection, rather than being passive echoes of the past. The holy legacy from being revealed the following day when Michael was interviewed spontaneously by a local radio station, interrogated by both critical and doubtful callers, one of whom asked, "Are you suggesting these wolves are? Isn't it risky to blend myth and truth when dealing with the supernatural?" The barrage of inquiries left Michael feeling growingly exposed. The pressure to offer specific solutions conflicted with the ethereal character of his findings. He understood then that the struggle was not merely external, but rather an internal conflict between his need for logical justification and the ethereal charm of his ancestry as arguments. Infuriated and divided, local law enforcement declared intentions to expand patrols in the region, citing safety concerns. This intervention aimed to address worries about the wolves' peculiar behavior. The community's more practical members merely served to fan the flames, the possibility that the wolf pack would be relocated by the government, cutting off their connection to the. Michael's uneasiness was heightened by ancient traditions about the wolf's soulful eyes, and intentional motions had developed into a live link to his family's history, and any disturbance posed a threat to its integrity. Michael felt the weight of destiny as he stood on the brink of this crucial moment, that bond forever, forcing upon him every bit of information, every rumored legend, and every divisive viewpoint that came together too. The time to confront the riddle head-on had come to develop a single unavoidable fact. When Michael arrived, the forest itself appeared to be holding its breath. He decided that the next part of his trip would be final test, a final showdown by the old oak or the wolf, the ghostly apparition, and all of his forefathers' legacies would culminate in that instant as Thunder Michael was aware that his life and the future of the world were in danger as the wind carried the sound of old voices. The battle had reached its peak, laying the groundwork for a climax, and our concept of the wild would never be the same, where contemporary fact and fabled memory will collide in a revelation that would change not only his. Under the strain of growing public outrage and the steadfast drive, destiny, but also the community's soul, Michael's personal journey reached a point where local authorities had to take immediate action in A. During a contentious town hall meeting in the refurbished Civic Center, opinions on the future of the folklore, local leaders, safety advocates, and the mysterious guardians of the forest. The gathering was packed with both aficionados and regular citizens, each group vehemently debating what ought to be done about the wolf pack's peculiar activity and the odd occurrences Michael had recorded. The discussion was started by Mr. Whitaker, a council member renowned for his pragmatic style. By calling for quick action, we can guarantee our community's safety. Claimed that by keeping an eye on these wild animals and, if required, transferring them, we cannot let myths take precedence over public safety's sober tone and pragmatic considerations. Struck a chord with many who were concerned that the paranormal explanations could result in harmful complacency, but a compelling counterargument from locals and long-term inhabitants. Among the storytellers, a revered elder named Mrs. Jenkinson rose and recalled the deep intergenerational. She remarked quietly, "These wolves were part of the community's connection with the forest. Conviction are more than simply untamed creatures. They are the living reminders of our forefathers, guardians of our cultural legacy, and interrupt their natural order is to break the connection that has kept us alive for generations," she said passionately. The atmosphere serving as a reminder to everyone that the forest had mysteries and legacies that predate contemporary society. Michael was propelled into the spotlight as a result of these public altercations, thanks to his blog entries and personal recordings. Had generated a lot of discussion, and now both were carefully examining everything he said. Michael ascended the platform with a shaky but determined voice in front of both believers and cynics throughout the gathering. Comprehend the safety issues he raised. But what I have seen is far more than a chance event. Wolves, tree markings, and the ghostly presence at the old oak belong to a significant legacy, one that connects us to the past and directs us toward an understanding-based future. With reverence for the natural world, his words roar with passion and convey his own truth. The room's focus and acted as a mediator between the opposing viewpoints as the debate exacerbated the tension. Reached a peak when local law enforcement declared that they would be conducting more patrols and maybe moving. Operation was planned for the next week. This choice was made in an effort to. A portion of the populace immediately reacted negatively to the public panic, viewing it as a disrespect to their cultural identity. Tradition, passionate yelling and crying pleas for protecting the sacred caused the gathering to devolve into pandemonium. Balance between the eternal wisdom of the wild and human progress, feeling the weight of this divisive public opinion. After realizing that facing the enigma head-on was the only way to end the conflict, Michael made the decision that the wolf pack's upcoming departure could break the community's essential ties to the historic. He decided to lead a last-ditch effort to stop the forest forces from personal journey to the ancient oak, an action that would serve as a protest, as well as a record of the truth, against tampering with the timeless order of nature. And that same night, Michael got ready for his last stand, holding his notebook with a high-resolution camera and the medallion that had turned into a talisman of his heritage. With his pocket firmly in place, he returned to the woodland as the storm roared overhead, its anger mimicking the battle. Every lightning strike illuminated the way within the village, and every thunderclap served as a reminder of the nature's destructive and protective force as he made his way through the perilous path. Michael's thoughts swirled with the town hall gathering and the passionate exchanges that he remembers. The sentimental declaration of ANC Estelbonds made by Mrs. Jenkins and Mr. Whitaker's demand for contemporary safety measures, these voices speaking for the as he pushed farther into the forest. The conflict between tradition and advancement resonated in his heart when Michael at last arrived at the ancient oak, a massive tree with gnarled branches and spreading roots that appeared to protect. He felt the full weight of decades of secrets as soon as the place was submerged. The earth beneath the tree was carved with the faded S symbols that mirrored those on the medallion in a ghostly luminosity. The wolf pack had been known to congregate here at the stone tablet, and tonight the lead wolf was visible, its eyes glimmering. Michael stood in front of the great oak with a sense of haste and regret, pausing when he realized that his next steps would be crucial. He said out loud, speaking to both the silent forest as well as the community's doubtful voices, "I'm not here to argue with reason, but to remind everyone of our history, our legends, and our deep-rooted ties to the natural world are worthy of being preserved." As his speech seemed to be borne by the wind through the branches, to blend in with the forest's natural sounds, demonstrating the implicit unity between humans and the storm's wild growing all around him, Michael decided resolutely to record this last altercation, catching the unfiltered. In doing so, he sought to convey the moment's intensity and indisputable magic, unquestionable proof of the forest's long history, and to encourage the locals to see past their fears and embrace their common ancestry. The wolves, as though appreciating his resolve, drew nearer, their collective eyes focused on him while the ghostly presence from earlier times hovered around the tree. With the thunder resounding and the wind whispering ancient secrets, Michael felt as though he had arrived at that tense moment. The point of no return. The encounter was about honoring the truth of the situation, not merely about maintaining a magical bond, a heritage that had influenced both his life and the lives of people in his neighborhood. As he understood that the night would mark a turning point, so he lifted his camera to capture this final act of resistance and truth, point at which contemporary reality and legendary memory might eventually converge. As Michael made his way to the great oak for what seemed to be the pinnacle of the storm, its rage reached a fever pitch. Thunder rocked as the woodland surrounding him roiled with energy during his entire journey. The canopy lightning created brief visuals in the sky, and the intense rain made it difficult to distinguish between the natural and the paranormal. Enhanced the pulse in his ears with each step he took on the small, perilous route, as though at the area where the big oak loomed large, the ground underneath him echoed with years of untold secrets. Magnificent, with its enormous trunk and sweeping roots radiating a sense of primal might. The inscriptions on Michael's inner light seemed to shine through the bark and the mysterious runes that echoed those on his medallion and stone tablet. As the shadows swirled in the darkness, eyes flew around, absorbing every detail, including the faint glow on the ground, erratic trends, and, above all, the configuration of the wolf pack, which is headed by the regal alpha, whose eyes, now glowing with an almost ethereal intensity, had regrouped in a complete circle around the oak. They all looked at Michael as if they had been waiting for him to reach this point. Crucial time. The forest appeared to hold its breath for a lengthy, suspended moment, and the deafening quiet was only broken up by the steady drumming of the rain and the wolves' low, melancholy howls that reverberated deep inside. The conflict between the material and the spiritual reached its peak in Michael's soul in that intense environment. Peak every single detail, including the smell of pine and wet earth, the chilly feel of the flickering light that showed brief glimpses of the ghostly guardian merged into a storm on his skin. One overwhelming insight. This was the time when his prior secrets came to light, and the forest's ancient legacy would be forever revealed. Michael cautiously moved forward with his camera and notepad firmly grasped. The storm's ferocity seems to reflect the chaos inside him, a whirlpool of contrasting feelings that ranged from unadulterated terror to a motivated resolve as he could practically hear his forefather's hushed call whispering from the ground as he arrived at the base of every faint tremor in the air, every rustling leaf, and every engraved rune on the bark discussed how his ancestry was bound to the wild in ways that he had, because of a legacy that had been passed down through the decades. Only now starting to understand, as though called by the collective beating of. The ghostly figure reappeared in the forest, but this time it was closer. Its form was more defined near the edge of the clearing, and its gaze was penetrating the apparition eyes with a radiance. Michael's was hit by a gentle, unearthly light that was so intense it gave him chills at that very instant. The figure made it obvious that remembering who you were was not a danger. However, a serious benediction that urged him to take back his proper position as a protector of the wild legacy the wolf stirred at. When the ethereal apparition appeared, the alpha wolf advanced with a noble stance and unblinking, intense eyes. A loud howl came from the pack, resonating over the area as a call and an offering. Michael sensed the ferocity of the howl deep inside of him, as if the very clearing were an old song. His heart was being urged by the woodland spirit to accept the meeting point of myth and recollection at that pivotal moment. Michael lifted his camera and started filming, catching each and every detail of the scene of the ethereal guardian, the magnificent wolf formation, and the colorful. His palms shook from the energy coming from the old oak, not just out of fear, but also from the strong conviction that he was seeing a sea change, a time when the past, present, and future came together, were entangled, and the atmosphere was electric with the bittersweet and the promise of revelation. Acknowledgement of the sacrifices made by his predecessors throughout this magnificent tableau. Michael experienced a deep change in himself as a result of facing these ancient powers. Was more than just an incident. It was a life-changing event that forced him to face his deepest concerns and accept his ancestry's inheritance, the lines separating myth and, for a brief instant, reality shifted, and he saw that his voyage was a part of a greater timeless cycle. As the storm subsided, the first dance of nature, memory, and destiny, dawnlight gently made its way over the horizon, passing over the ethereal figure and the wolf pack, retreated into the forest shadows, where the old oak was now covered in the gentle. The radiance of the early morning light served as a living testament to the enduring link and a silent witness to the happenings of the night. Michael, who was still standing in front of the oak, felt the weight of the conflict between man and nature. In that pivotal moment, the secrets of the night were lifted off his shoulders. He realized that his life and the forest legacy would never be the same after the storm had exposed the wild. As Michael made his way back to the ancient oak, the culmination of his trip was revealed. The woodland, which had before been pulsing with a mysterious energy, now throbbed within intensity that caused each heartbeat to reverberate like a drum as ominous clouds swirled above, their rumbling blending with the wolf pack's low, melancholy howls, which had reassembled in a purposeful. It was at this point that all of the ancient legacies and hidden truths would almost ritualistically circle around the oak. The ground beneath Michael's boots seemed energized as he stepped into the clearing, as if every step evoked memories of the past, the massive, stately great oak towering over. Every groove in its bark, with its twisted branches and intricately engraved inscriptions, told a tale of the forgotten, progenitors of a sacred covenant between humans and nature, and of ceremonies formerly carried out under the same stormy skies that had lasted for generations. The symbols on the wood seemed to shine dimly in the sporadic lightning bursts. Fueled by the night's unadulterated energy, the alpha stood in the middle of the wolf circle, its coat glistening with a ghostly glow eyes that were focused on Michael for a brief instant, as if time. As Michael listened to the pack's silent communion, his heart thumped in his ears. The wolves weren't supposed to be there. Instead, they emanated a sense of somber intent, as if they had been trusted to protect a secret that was now prepared for disclosure. Then, as if the ghostly guardian returned to the edge of the clearing, The translucent figure, controlled by an invisible force, floated toward Michael with a calm grace, its eyes bright and full of timeless energy, now more defined than before. Michael heard the echo of a long-forgotten promise in that still gaze, wisdom locked with his. Remember who you. The presence of the spectral person was both reassuring and overpowering. Bridge between the domain of ancestral memory and the physical world in that tense moment when the alpha wolf stepped, moved forward and screamed in a strong, powerful voice that seemed to reverberate across the air, summoning the spirits of the woodland and reaffirming the mystical connection between Michael's ancestry and nature. The distant thunder and the gentle patter of the rain blended with the howl to create an ethereal symphony that had engulfed him, causing every strand of his body to shiver with fear and anxiety as Michael realized. Thought this encounter was about accepting his destiny as a person, not just about seeing a natural phenomena. Michael, the tremblingly determined protector of an ancient legacy, grabbed camera and started filming, documenting every aspect of this bizarre meeting. His gaze strayed to the medallion clutch, a talisman in his fingers, as he did so, that had traveled with him at every turn, the medallion's recognizable pattern resonating with the inscriptions on the oak, and his palm felt the soft pulse of the crest from his childhood photos. It was a physical connection to his history and a reminder that his family had long been intertwined with the wild's mysterious forces. Slowly approaching, the ethereal guardian blended in with the surrounding natural surroundings while speaking in a voice that the apparition went beyond words, somehow speaking straight to his spirit. Whispered a blessing. Michael's eyes welled up with tears, not from fear, but he felt the whole weight of his history, the pleasures and sorrows of generations before, in that instant of profound recognition. Given the everlasting assurance of safety and direction from the wilderness, the link was immediate, and, as the storm hit Wayne, an unbreakable fusion of the past and present reshaped his entire existence. In the pale pinks and blues of the early morning tinted the horizon, the wolf pack gradually scattered back into the phantom guardian in the forest shadows appears to have accomplished its mission. Michael was left alone in front of the great oak as it vanished into the mist. Rain-soaked and lit by the incoming light, there in the silent aftermath, Michael had a metamorphosis in the midst of the fear and uncertainty that had previously obscured his way, had vanished into a serene assurance, a recognition that he had been selected by the wild, with all of its untamed mysteries, to continue its legacy. Michael realized at that last, dramatic moment that his journey was not an end, but rather the start of a lifetime. Dedication to respecting the sacred encounter and the connection between humans and nature. Had discovered realities at the ancient oak that would serve as his compass forever. Truths that every heartbeat and every whisper of. With a deep, reassuring breath, the wind and every wild creature's vigilant, I promise salvation and continuance. Knowing that this night had permanently altered him, Michael put his camera down. The spectral legacy of the woodland, the unspoken warning from his guardian, and the alpha wolf's unblinking stare had become ingrained in his. Michael left the oak with a heart full of thankfulness and determination as the new day broke, prepared to tell his tale and guarantee that the timeless knowledge of the nature would keep illuminating the ways of. As dawn dawned over the horizon, Michael appeared from the woodland, beckoning those who dared to listen. Changed his path, which was characterized by odd meetings, archaic symbolism, and, at the end of the haunting call of the wild, there was a discovery that went beyond myth and contemporary life, the sacred gathering around the historic oak with the silent blessing of the spectral guardian and the steadfast. As the forest gradually grew, the alpha wolf's gaze had revealed secrets that were both universal and intimate. Michael felt the burden of his past, his family's forgotten legacy, and the undying spirit as he woke up to a new day of nature combined to form a unified, harmonious truth. Michael discovered upon his return home that nothing would ever be the same. The isolated paths and silent times of reflection had been replaced with a profound, unbreakable bond with the primordial powers that ruled the wilderness. Each leaf rustling, each whisper of A long line of echoes was now carried by the wind, promising that nature in all its untainted beauty and mystery would be inextricably linked to his destiny. The stone tablet, the medallion, and the oak's mysterious markings were not merely relics from a past time. They had integrated into his identity. In the days after Michael, he was reminded of the sacred covenant made between his forefathers and the wild. Committed himself to protecting and disseminating the information he had discovered, he started by painstakingly recording each detail of his trip, fusing his field notes, video, and introspective thoughts to create an all-encompassing narrative of his metamorphosis. His blog was previously a silent archive of his isolated thoughts, developed into a lively forum for local historians, inquiring skeptics, and other nature lovers, gathering to share experiences and perspectives via emotional messages and eye-catching pictures. Michael described his interactions with the wolf pack, the ancient legacy unveiled at the stone, and the silent message of the spectral guardian. Every story in Circle was infused with the wonder and hope that had inspired his own metamorphosis at neighborhood gatherings. Michael told his tale to a newfound openness at town hall meetings and neighborhood gatherings. He discussed the strong ancestry that binds humans to the establishing a connection that, when respected, might mend past wounds and pave the way for a. His remarks struck a chord with many, encouraging others to strive for a more peaceful future. Look past the obvious aspects of daily life and look for the unspoken bonds that bind us to our neighbors who started talking about their personal experiences and family after initially dismissing the weird events as just folklore. Legends reinforced the significance of President O.B. serving the past by weaving a beautiful tapestry of local memory. Additionally, Michael worked with local historians and wildlife specialists to plan an exhibition at the community. Photographs, historical papers, and relics were on display at the site, pertaining to the ancient law of the area, including objects associated with the enigmatic forest guardian legend. This endeavor promoted the community's wider cultural heritage in addition to honoring his family's legacy. Invitation for everyone to accept the natural world's wisdom and mystery in spite of the ongoing difficulties, and a renewed hope was ignited by Michael's journey, notwithstanding the occasional skepticism of those who still adhered to modern rationality. The once dreaded and misinterpreted wolf has evolved into a symbol of curiosity in the timeless lessons that nature delivers, of direction and continuity, a constant reminder that the wild contains secrets vital to our shared identity. The slow change in public opinion from disdain to acceptance reflected Michael's own metamorphosis. From loneliness to community, from fear to acceptance to reverence today. As Michael looked out into the forest, he began to see it as a haven rather than a place of unpredictably dangerous danger, of truth and healing. The knight had learned from his deep revelations that real strength comes from accepting one's recognizing the past's beauty and its wounds in order to create a future enhanced by history's teachings, and the wild's legacy, where once a faint murmur in his heart suddenly throbbed with vitality in each gust of wind and soft leaf rustle. With this newly discovered insight, Michael decided to carry on with his quest to record, honor, and disseminate the complex relationship between humans and nature. Had shown a timeless truth that we are all a part of, in addition to helping him reconnect with his ancestral roots, a continuous link that the Earth's eternal spirit has weaved together. Thank you. If Michael's narrative has inspired you to accompany him on this incredible journey into the heart of the wilderness, something inside of you, if you also think that nature's eternal power and mysteries are real, please subscribe to, like this video on our channel, and leave a comment below with your opinions. Stay tuned for more stories that bridge the gap between myth and truth, and let's keep investigating the ages-old traditions that bind us all together.